No,
It's alive! It's alive! Howdy y'all, I'm Tim, Game Master, Keeper of Dungeons and General Troll, coming at you from Outlaw Games and Toys here at the center of Austin fandom. Today we're talking about monsters. We have three selections, three games about building or capturing monsters for various reasons. First up, a bit of a heavier game than I think we've talked about in general. Definitely for more veteran gamers. From Plaid Hat Games, it's Abomination: The Heir of Frankenstein. This is a game of gothic horror. They actually call it a gothic strategy game of monster building, where you are competing scientists trying to replicate the modern Prometheus undertaken by Victor Frankenstein. A mysterious benefactor has found Frankenstein's research and is holding a competition amongst other leading scientific minds to attempt to replicate the process of bestowing life on inanimate tissue. It is a worker placement game where you place your minions, your helpers, your Igors, if you will, around Paris. The game takes place in turn of the century Paris. Resolving different actions, collecting scientific research to sort of up your knowledge, charge Leyden jars, which are a form of resource, and collecting cadavers and other materials from graveyards and cemeteries. The idea being to have enough dead tissue to build a monster and bring it to life. So it's worker placement with a bit of resource management. It is kind of a heavier game that takes place over 12 rounds. And each round is sort of divided into different phases. There is a phase where an event happens, you draw a card from an event deck, and it'll be some flavorful scenario that takes its inspiration from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. There's a vengeful sea captain that is trying to hunt down the monster. Spoilers, the benefactor is Frankenstein's monster who escaped after killing his creator, and is trying to get leading scientists to build another abomination so he's no longer in his sort of unwanted solitude. After 12 rounds, the captain finds and kills the monster. Alternatively, the game can end as soon as one player successfully reanimates a dead body, flesh golem, if you will. This ends the game, and that player will be the winner. Like I said, bit of a heavier game. There's a lot of strategy and moving parts to it. There are the event cards, so there's a lot of narrative flavor that we've seen in games like Dead of Winter from Plaid Hat Games and Stuffed Fables. Elements of worker placement in terms of the board is kind of, like I said, the 19th century Paris with different locations that all have different actions, and a bit of resource management, trying to keep cadavers and other dead flesh fresh enough for use in your experiments and then using them effectively. Game plays 2 to 4, takes 60 to 120 minutes. My experience with Plaid Hat Games, things of their genre, I would add a bit of time to that estimate. But a game of gothic strategy and monster building. If you don't like monsters, or building monsters rather, and would rather capture them, we have Richard Garfield's Carnival of Monsters. Richard Garfield, the same game designer that gave us Magic the Gathering, Robo Rally, as well as, I think it was King of Tokyo? Yes. Definitely likes monsters and other sorts of creatures. In Carnival of Monsters, you are a member of the Royal Monstrological Society, kind of English aristocratic club of monster hunters. There is a yearly competition where over 4 seasons these monster hunters go out and they try to assemble the greatest menagerie or carnival of monsters. The way they do that is by spending money to recruit helpers, go on expeditions, and capture the various beasts. It is kind of a card drafting game mechanically. The game's played over 4 rounds, each one is a season. Each season has a sort of personal goal, and each player has their own set of secret goals that score them additional points. You have a supply of money that you start out with, and every round you draw 8 cards. You choose one to keep or play, pass the rest on, and you have to do that basically every round, and you pay money to play a lot of these cards. The way you capture monsters is by playing them from your hand and spending land. Those of you who've played Magic the Gathering are kind of familiar with this land concept. In this game, lands are kind of also a resource. You play them when you are drafting cards in that initial sort of drafting phase. and they give you a set of resources that you can spend, and you can only spend lands once per round. So you can have 3 forests or 3 dark lands, and monsters cost various amounts of different kinds of lands to be played, and monsters are worth points. There are other ways to score points as well, giving talks and completing other goals, but it is at its core a card drafting game about capturing monsters of various kinds. Fantastic art in this game, has a very kind of dark and gritty feel to it. Those of you that have, again, played Magic the Gathering know that art is a huge part of that game, and they spare no expense. It's the same thing with this game. Plays 2 to 5 and goes rather quickly. Like I said, the game's only 4 rounds, at the end of which people tally up their points and whoever has the most wins. But if you're looking for something a little even lighter than this, and certainly lighter than Abomination, something in the more party vein, we have from the same creative minds that brought us Exploding Kittens, that is Elon Lee and Matthew Inman. I think they most recently teamed up for a game called Throw Burrito, which we might be talking about in the future. We have Bears versus Babies. This kind of tongue-in-cheek game is another game where you are building monsters. It is a card game and is kind of more of a party game. Mechanics are really simple. You get a hand of cards at the start of the game. Every turn you're drawing cards and playing a card, and pretty much every card you draw or play is either a piece of a bear or a monster or a baby. The idea of the game is you're trying to build a monster that can survive an onslaught of an army of babies. I didn't come up with it, I'm just telling you what it's about. So, for instance, your monster can be a bald eagle who is also a taco, or a Pomeranian of light and wonder in business attire, or even a handsome salmon armed with knives and burritos. I think I saw one that was a llama who is piloted by a robo-squirrel with guns for fingers. Each part of a monster, you have heads, torsos, limbs. Each part of a monster has a certain combat value, and on your turn you can either draw a card, play a card that is added to your monster, your bear, if you will. Not all of them are bears. Or if you happen to draw a baby card, you must immediately play it into a common area where there are armies of babies slowly growing. The armies are, I think, associated with, there's one for land, one for sea, and one for air, and each monster that you're building is associated with one of those types. There are air monsters, sea monsters, and land monsters. So you can, on your turn, draw a card as an action, play a card as an action, or you can provoke. This is, you just, for your turn, you are yelling provoke and choosing one of the 3 armies of babies to fight. Those players who have a monster of that type, a bear of that type, will compare their combat values and see if they can defeat the army of babies. Each baby that is played in one of those armies has a certain combat value in and of itself. You add them all together, see what monsters can beat that combined value, and then of the monsters for that army, land, air, or sea, whoever has the highest total basically scores those points that were in that deck of babies. And you do this until someone draws the last card in the deck, at which point everyone has one more round to sort of score whatever points they get, and whoever has the most points at the end of the game wins. Once you're done fighting a army of babies, whoever wins keeps the baby cards as sort of their score, and all monsters involved in that fight get discarded. So basically, as soon as you get involved in a fight, you have to start building a new monster. It's a fun game, can be played in 20 minutes, probably erring on the longer side, closer to 30 minutes. 2 to 5 players, fairly straightforward mechanics, and absolutely silly. So whether you want something dark and heavy, something lighter and humorous, or something somewhere in the middle, we have something for you regarding building or capturing your very own monsters. And that's going to be it for our games this week. Just as a reminder, every Tuesday and Friday, starting around 7, we have our Magic the Gathering nights, speaking of Richard Garfield. Every Saturday is our open gaming day. The more organized open play portion of those days usually start around 7 as well. And every first and third Wednesday of the month, we have our mini painting nights where you can come in and learn how to paint your very own monsters for Dungeons and Dragons or whatever tabletop game you happen to be playing, or if you just like figures and the hobby. We got you covered. That's it for this week. I'll see you next time. dramatic look. Zoom in. It's alive!